أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد بن عبد الله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الأرجاس وطهرهم من الأدناس وجعل مودتهم أجرا على الناس لا سيما على بقية الله في الأرضين الإمام المنتظر صاحب الزمان عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ابن هداة المهديين وعلى صحبهم الأخيار المنتجبين وعلى جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين والشهداء والمجاهدين في سبيل الله منذ آدم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، قال الله عز وجل في القرآن الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. At the onset, let me take this opportunity to thank the committee here and Brother Jawad for this very kind invitation for me to spend the next few nights here in front of your bright faces, that I might benefit from being in your presence. And the very flowery introduction he also gave me. Now here, in this series of discussions we're going to have, I want to start, as was mentioned, we'll be speaking about some of the formalistic aspects of religion and going beyond them. But to do that, we require a more wholesome understanding, not of our actions in religion, but of our God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? You see, a person will commit their deeds or perform every action depending on what their world view is, depending on how they think about things. So, for example, someone who believes the earth is flat might not travel too far in the fear that they might fall off the edge. We as theists, as Muslims, as some people who believe in a God who created us, has power over us, will judge us, is watching us, our actions will be in accordance with that mindset. And therefore, our actions and our deeds will be performed in the spirit of how we perceive or how we view that Allah, that God. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be universal across all cultures, but I know from my culture, being raised up with God, I was taught about God that I have a duty towards Him because He has heaven and hell. And if I don't perform those things which He has made obligatory, He is waiting to punish. I have to be fearful of God. So I grew up fearing God. A God to be feared. A God in whose presence I was walking on eggshells. I have to do this, have to do that, have to fast, have to pray, have to perform Hajj, have to do all of these things. If I don't, well, this is a theological issue on how we perceive God and Allah. However, it has its own effect in our spiritual lives and our jurisprudential lives. How so? This God is a God. Allah is a God in front of whom I have certain duties, in front of whom I am duty bound to perform certain things. And my entire fiqh, our jurisprudence, is based around this. In fact, in our jurisprudence, in our fiqh, we have a concept known as bara'atul dhimma. To make sure you have done everything, if you are unsure of something, make sure you have done all of these things, thereby warranting yourself safe from punishment in the hereafter. Because otherwise, Allah, you may warrant punishment. Unless you do X, Y, Z, make sure as precaution you have done these things. And thereby you know you have discharged your responsibility and your duty in front of Him, in front of who you are, duty bound, charged with responsibility. One who is waiting, you better not step out of line. Do we need to, over the next couple of nights, before we move on to anything else, know Allah? Is this the Allah I am supposed to know? Is this how Allah has marketed Himself? Is this how Allah has portrayed Himself? As that one who I should be constantly fearful of, and fearful of His punishments and hellfire and the grave and the worms and the squeezing, and is this my Allah? Or is Allah beyond this? Is it that Allah in front of whom I am duty bound, that I make sure in all of my actions and deeds in front of Him? For example, the Hajj. I make sure when I perform the Hajj, I'm told time and time again, as you perform the tawaf, you make sure your left shoulder is constantly facing the Kaaba, and it should not digress from there. And if it does, then that tawaf is cancelled. You have to perform it again. And so my entire mind is in my tawaf, that my shoulder is pointing the Kaaba. That's my tawaf, that's my Hajj. Or when I am stoning, which used to be a pillar, now it's a wall, right? When I'm throwing the jamarat against that shaitan, you make sure you hit the middle of that wall and not the side. So I try this way. Why? I'm trying to hit the middle, and my entire concentration is on hitting that middle part. Or when I stand to pray, I am in His presence. When I stand to pray, I make sure what? That all my makharij and my this and that is all perfect. Bismillahir Rahman. All my concentration is on this, because the prayer has to be done in this way, and if I don't do it this way, then perhaps it won't be accepted. And now I have a hadith about the salat. In qubilat qubila ma siwaha, wa in ruddat rudda ma siwaha. If it is accepted, all else is accepted, and if the salat is rejected, all else is. So now all my concentration on the prayer is on its form, has to be performed this way, otherwise it could be rejected, and if it's rejected, everything else is rejected. I have to make sure I have fulfilled my duties in front of that one who has charged me with duties, otherwise I may warrant punishment in the hereafter. But is this the way Allah has shown Himself? If I really think about Him, the one who has charged me with the responsibility, and I better not step out of line. This attitude or this perception of Allah, what ramifications or what consequences does that have on my ibadat, on my acts of worship, and therefore on my relationship with Allah? If I say I'm in this life, I am to progress towards Him spiritually, what effect is this going to have? Let's take an example. Now all of us at some point in our lines of work would have had someone superior to us, or we may be superior to others in our workplace. Maybe now, maybe in the future, maybe in the past. I'm going to put myself in that position. And I am someone's PA, he is my boss. So me and my boss and I, we're traveling. We have a meeting far away. We're traveling on the motorway, or as you call them here, highway. We're traveling on the highway, and it's a long, tiresome journey. We're tired. There's a service station on the side, and my boss tells me, Muhammad, you know what, let's park up here, let's rest at the service station. So we rest at the service station, go inside, we take a seat. He tells me, Muhammad, do me a favor. Go to that kiosk over there, Starbucks or Costa or whatever, and get me tea, please. Milk and 2 sugars. Milk and 2 sugars. My boss has requested me for a cup of tea, milk and 2 sugars. So I go there, towards the kiosk, trembling. Milk and 2 sugars, milk and 2 sugars, milk and 2, I better get this right. And I asked the barista there behind the counter, please give me a cup of tea, milk and 2 sugars, please, must be right. And still I'm trembling. He or she behind the counter presents me with a cup of tea, milk and 2 sugars. I take it back towards my boss, my hand still trembling, hoping, why? Because he is my superior, and if it is not to his satisfaction, I will face the consequences of that. Yes? That's how I think about my Allah. If it is not right in its form, we will face the consequences. So, I tremble towards my boss and I place that cup of tea on his table. And he takes a sip. He says, that's good tea. And I wipe the sweat off my brow that I passed this. I gave him tea with milk and 2 sugars as he requested. I passed that test. Now I won't fall into the repercussions or the ramifications, negative consequences of that, because I did what he asked me to do. Yes, I did what he asked me to do. But now let's change the analogy. I'm not traveling with my boss. It's my wife and I. We're traveling together on the highway, a long journey, and she says, you know what, Muhammad, I'm really tired. Can we stop for a while? So we stop. We get off at the service station, she takes a seat, she says, you know what, I'm so tired, I could really do with a cup of tea, milk and 2 sugars. Yeah, fine. I walk to the kiosk, not trembling with fear, but wanting to bring her what she has asked for, a cup of tea, milk and 2 sugars. On the way to the kiosk, I remember my wife, and I say, you know what, she's asked for milk and 2 sugars, but I know that with that she's also going to like this muffin and this sandwich which is there. She didn't ask for it, but I know she likes it. I know she likes this. So I take that tray, and I put the muffin and the sandwich there with it, and I go to the bar, and I say to the barista, not shaking with fear, I say, can I have a cup of tea please, milk and 2 sugars? And the barista gives me exactly what my boss had asked for. And I bring that back to my wife on a tray with the sandwich and a muffin and the cup of tea, milk and 2 sugars, and I present it to her. And she says, that's good tea. And then she also has the muffin and the sandwich. Both of them asked for a cup of tea, milk and 2 sugars. In the form of what they had asked for, there was no difference. Which act was better? Certainly the second one was more wholesome, there was more with it. What was the difference? The first one was done out of trembling fear because of the perception I had of the one who asked for that. The second one was not an act of fear. The second one was an act of? Love. It was the same. My Salatul Maghrib is the same 3 rak'ah that he asked for. There's no change in the form. Just as the tea was the same cup of tea, milk and 2 sugars. But if I'm doing it fearing him, concentrating on the form, I have detracted from its purpose, and I have given him what he asked for so that I won't be punished for it in the hereafter. My makhraj was good, my doubts were not there, and I was contrary. But if I do it out of love, you will see that in my qunut, my supplications are lengthened. My sajda is longer. Why? Because I'm not fearing him, I'm speaking to him. It is not out of his trembling fear that if I don't do this, he will punish me. I am doing it out of love for him. And it is a more wholesome deed. It is not because I am duty bound and he will punish me. It is not the mindset of the jurist that I am using to perform this act. It is the mindset of the lover. It is the same cup of tea, milk and 2 sugars is exactly the same. The one who thinks with that mindset of being duty bound to perform that deed of prayer, for example, before coming to the prayer mat, we'll think about the methods of prayer, the prerequisites of prayer. Have I done them? Now the methods. The doubts in the prayer. I better not come across this doubt. If I do come across this doubt, this is the answer. If in this rak'ah I have to do this is the answer. And all of these things will be flowing through the person's mind that I should perform the prayer as he, Allah, has asked me to do. But if I come as a lover of him, as he wishes me to see him, as he, as we will see soon, has marketed himself for me, has portrayed himself for me, if I have a better understanding of how he wants me to see him, I will approach the prayer in a different way. In fact, I will not approach the prayer. I will not approach the prayer. Strange? No. When I go back home after these couple of weeks with you all, and I miss my family, and I go back to them, and I arrive home after 2 weeks having missed them, waiting and longing to see them, I knock the door, and the door opens, And I know my smiling family is waiting there with their open arms to take me in. My kids are waiting there to rush on me and jump. I know this. Do you think I will stand there and when the door opens I will say, oh, door. Door is made of PVC. It is white. And then there's a brass knocker. Oh, this needs polishing. And the handle is shaped. Will I do that or will I just use that door? I will not concentrate on the door. The door is there. I have to go through the door. But the door is not the goal. The goal is my family within. The goal is not the prayer. The prayer is not the goal. Does that mean I don't pray? No. I have to go through the door. It's the difference between someone who sees the prayer in front of himself or herself and says, prayer, prayer, prayer. Why? Because he has commanded it and made it obligatory. Prayer. Because he has commanded it. So my focus is the prayer. It's a difference of perception only. Prayer, prayer because he has demanded it. This is the outlook of the jurist, or the jurist mindset. Not that we are jurists, but sometimes we have the juristic mindset. Prayer, prayer because he has made it obligatory. No. He is my focus. The prayer is just the vehicle or the means to get to him. The prayer is no longer the focus. Prayer, methodology, blah, 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 no. Him. I want to reach him. I don't want the door. I want my family's embrace. I'm not going to concentrate on the door. The door is just a means to get to them. The prayer is a means to get to my beloved. It is Allah. But if I fear him, I will concentrate on how he wants me to. And this detracts from my deed itself. This detracts from the spirit of that deed. Which is why my Imam, fifth holy Imam Al-Baqir alayhi salam, has been, it has been reported from him or narrated from him, أنه قال لحفص بن غياث, he said to his companion Hafs, he said to him, Ya Hafs, الحب أفضل من الخوف. Oh Hafs, love is far superior to fear. He did not say don't have fear. He did not say fear doesn't have its place in Islam. He said love is a stage superior and more meritorious than love is a stage more superior than fear. To worship Allah out of his fear is one thing, but to worship him recognizing his love is another stage altogether. Doing actions of love fulfill those actions themselves. But these actions we can perform, and we will realize once we realize how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes us to see him. How in the Quran and the Ahadith, for example, the texts we have, he has primarily marketed and portrayed himself. You know, whenever you want to sell a service you have as a company, you make sure on your posters that is the main thing which is there. We care about you, we do this, we do that, and you make sure that's in big. Allah in his posters has sold himself in a certain way which we have fallen short in realizing that. How? We have a hadith, for example, in Tafsir al-Askari of our holy Imam narrating from our fourth holy Imam, Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, that he is narrating about a conversation Musa alayhi salam, Moses, had with Allah. So he says, Oh Allah Ta'ala ila Musa, Allah spoke and revealed to Musa. What did he say? Look at how he speaks to his prophet. Prophet Musa, incidentally. All of our prophets had different personalities. Yusuf had a personality, Isa had a personality, Musa had a personality, and those personalities are really shown in their communities and in the Quran certainly. Musa, he was a harsh character. He was very straightforward, blunt, to the point. Remember, Musa is that one who Allah tells him Musa in the Quran, when Musa goes up on the mountain to receive the first revelation, Allah commands him to go to Fir'aun. Allah tells him, Musa, speak to him layyinan, with us softly, that he might listen to you. Remember when Musa was there in Egypt, first of all, and there was a fight, the Quran is written, right? There was a quarrel between two people, and Musa aided one of them against the other one. What happened there? Musa struck him once the guy fell down dead. Musa was this kind of grand personality, strong, bold, rash, one might say. When he came back from the mountain and he saw his people worshipping that golden calf, the Quran says he came back, غَضْبَانَ أَسِفًا, enraged. He grabbed Harun, his brother, by the beard and said, what have you done? So this was Musa. Allah is telling Musa how to treat people, or how to Musa, market me for the people, sell me to the people. How? So Imam alayhi salam, Zainul Abidin alayhi salam is describing how Allah spoke to Musa. أوحى الله تعالى إلى موسى. Allah revealed to Musa. How? Musa, do what with me to the people? Warn them about me? They should worship me? Allah tells to Musa, حببني إلى خلقي وحبب خلقي إليّ. Musa, make me beloved to my creation, and make my creation beloved to me. Musa, I want this relationship with my creation, a relationship of love. I want to be with them this way, Musa. حببني إلى خلقي. Make me beloved to my creation. Make my creation beloved towards me. Now Musa asks Allah a question here. قال, so Musa replies to him, يا ربي فكيف أفعل? Oh my Lord, how do I go about doing this? How do I build this relationship between you and your creation? What does Allah say? Tell them to worship me? No. Warn them about Day of Judgment? No. Tell them about that sirat to the heaven which is thinner than a hair and sharp? No. Tell them about the squeezing in the... No. Musa, make them beloved towards me. Musa asks, how do I do that, my Lord? Allah says, ذكرهم بآلائي ونعمائي ليحبوني. Musa, remind them of the many blessings and many boons and beneficial things I have given them. Remind them of those things. Why? ليحبوني, that they may love me. Musa, I want this. So when we speak to Allah, when we speak about Allah to others, no. When we speak about Allah to ourselves, Allah says, ذَكِرْهُمْ. Allah, you are the one who gave me air to breathe. Allah, even air to breathe was after I was born. Allah, you gave me clothes to wear. Allah, you gave me water to drink. Allah, you gave me food to nourish me. Before I knew how to ask for food, asking. Allah, you gave me a tongue to speak and ask before I could even begin to ask you for anything. But Allah, all of these things you gave me after I was born. Allah, before I was born, you provided me mother and father, prepared there to nourish me. My mother carried me there for 9 months before I even was born into this world. Allah, you did all of this. Allah says to Musa, ذَكِرْهُمْ, remind them بِآلَائِ وَنَعْمَائِ, of my so many blessings, لِيُحِبُّونِ, that they may love me. Why? Why? Musa. So now, remember, we have to carry this message of Musa also when we speak to others and ourselves about Allah. Musa, Allah is telling Musa, فَلَئِن تَرُدَّ آبِقًا عَنْ بَهَابِي أَوْ ضَالًّا عَنْ فِنَائِي. For Musa, if you return back one runaway slave back to my door. How many? How many? 100? 5? 2? Musa, if you return back one runaway slave back to my door, or one person who has gone lost, you return him back to my courtyard. Allah is saying, Musa, how many? Allah tells Musa, أفضل لك, that is better for you, O Musa, من عبادة 100 سنة, than worship of 100 years. We are not going to see, most of us, probably all of us, we are not going to see 100 years of life, let alone worship of 100 years. Not only 100 years of worship, Allah continues to tell Musa, بِصِيَامِ نَهَارِهَا وَقِيَامِ لَيَالِهَا. Not only 100 years of worship, 100 years that you fast every day. So 365 times 100 every day, and stand in prayer every night. That kind of 100 years, Musa, if you return one runaway slave back to my door, it is better for you than that 100 years old. What does that tell us? My Allah is waiting for me. I am that runaway slave. I am that one who is lost from his courtyard. He is waiting. Imagine if, had it been the case that I insult my mother, for example, and disobey her, and rebel against her, and say, Mother, I wish not to see you anymore, and you are this, and I abuse her verbally, and I leave the house. And after I have children, for example, I realize my mistakes, what parents are, what mother is, and I go back, and I knock on the door, and my mother sees me. After decades of disobedience and separation from her, Mother, I have come back to you now, I'm sorry. How will my mother react? Will she drive me away from her door? Or with joyful tears in her eyes will she open her arm to take me back? My mother is one thin ray of that loving infinite sun, which is my Allah, waiting for me to return to Him. Muhammad, come back to me. I am waiting for you. But me, I perform my prayer and my fast and my hajj and my this and my that He will punish me if I don't do this, thereby destroying the spirit of that vehicle to Him in its entirety. It is not that I do not perceive my salat properly. It is not that I don't perceive my fasting properly. It is that I do not perceive my Allah properly. And this destroys or detracts, I can say, from that. But it's not my fault, all of it. I'm not all to blame. Because from this age, I have been raised with, as I said, punishment in the grave and roaring of the hellfire. And if I read these books about the akhirah, how the worms and the snakes and the this and that comes from the bottom and eats me in this way, not that these ahadith are not there. They are there. They are there. But they are far outweighed by how Allah primarily wants to portray Himself to His creation. One question here. This Allah, who starts almost every chapter of His holy book, save one. So 113 chapters in His holy book, He starts with His words in His name, who is Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Even these words of Rahmah, we have not understood. Inshallah, we will speak about Rahmah, what it really is. I'm not going to translate it as mercy, as we have in the Quran. Rahmah doesn't mean mercy. Rahmah is far beyond. That He started with this Rahmah, let me ask. Let's just translate it for mercy for the time being, for the next few minutes. Who in this crowd, maybe by a show of hands, if you're shy, don't show your hands. But you can ask yourself the question. Who in this crowd can say that during my life, maybe if you've lived for 15, 20, 25, 30, 60, 80, however many years, I can raise my hand and say, I know during my life Allah has certainly shown me rahmah and mercy. Can each of us say this in our lives? No, beyond that. I can remember an incident, for example, in my life, be it financial, Familial, some domestic issue, difficulties we all go through. Financial difficulty, everyone will go through at some point in health. Whatever difficulties you can imagine in your life, I went through this and I thought I was never going to come out of it, and then Allah showed me His rahmah and I came out of it. Imagine that point of the highest instance of mercy, of rahmah you can imagine Allah has He placed in your life until you are at this point now. That instant, I remember 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 months ago, whenever it was, that screaming difficulty, and Allah showed me His mercy. At that point, that was the apex of His mercy, for example. If we can point to that and say, that's when Allah showed me mercy, then just listen to this narration by our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa Inna arhama ma yakunullah bil abd. Indeed, the most, again, I have to use the word mercy because of a lack of sufficient translation for it. Indeed, the most merciful that Allah would be to His servant. If you think Allah has shown enough mercy already. Indeed, the most merciful will be when إِذَا وُضِعَ فِي حُفْرَتِهِ, when he is placed in that 6-foot ditch in the ground. That's when Allah shows most mercy. But how have I seen the grave? Darkness and squeezing and scorpions and snakes and worms and this point in my life, or after my life obviously, is when Allah is gonna be most merciful. But I think about Him fearful of meeting my beloved, because I thought about Him as that tyrant who's waiting with a whip, and as soon as I die and people bury me, suddenly Munkar and Nakir turn up with iron rods and say, oh no, this is not my Allah. This is not an Allah I would worship. Didn't Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam say that I do not worship you out of the fear of hell, nor out of the greed or covetousness of the palace? I see you worthy of worship, so I worshipped you. Which is why we chose these verses of the Quran to begin our discourse of the next few days with, and the brother recited for us this selection of verses, and amongst them one verse. If we may have read it 101 times already, but if we ponder upon each aspect of that verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Zumar, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Say, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves. Okay. Who is He talking to? Those who are ma'soom? No. Those who are the cream of humanity? No. Those who do good deeds all the time? No. He is talking to those who have transgressed. But how does He address them? قُلْ يَا عِبَادِي. Say, oh my servants, Allah is saying. Already Allah, me, the sinful one who is drowning in his sins, Allah is addressing me by attributing me to Himself. He says, my servants. We have one hadith, we're slightly going off on a tangent from this verse. We have a hadith about the life of Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh, you know, lived for, some hadith say 2,000 years. In the Quran it says he preached amongst his people for 950 years. Nearly a millennium of preaching. We're not even going to see 100 years. He spent 950 years not alive, preaching. And the narrations say after all that preaching, he received maybe a handful of followers maximum. Nuh alayhi salam then went to Allah and turned to Allah and said, Allah, they are not listening to me now, send your azab on them. Allah said, Nuh, before we do that, I want you to do something. Yes, Allah, I want you to become a potter. Do pottery, make pots and vases. Yeah, do it, okay? Allah's command. So for 11 years, Nuh is making pots, and you can imagine after 11 years, no one's buying them. they're mounting up to a huge heap of pots and vases decorated in this shape and that shape. After this time, Allah commands Nuh, now destroy them all. But Allah, I just made all of these. Allah says, yes. Now you find it so difficult to destroy them? No, these people you are asking me to send my adhab, they are my creation. And you are asking with all frivolousness, Allah send your adhab, they are mine. Allah says in this verse of the Quran, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِي, O my servants, my servants. So when we sin, when we read the Quran, read this. I am Allah's. Oh Allah, yes, I've sinned. Yes, I've been weak. Yes, yes, I'll sin again also. But Allah, I am yours. Allah says, my servants who have transgressed against themselves, أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. What's the message? Oh, my servants who have transgressed against themselves, beware of my hellfire. No. Beware of the trembling of the day of judgment. No. Oh, my servants who have transgressed against themselves. قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. What's the message? لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Do not, do whatever you do not despair in the rahmah of Allah. Why? إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبِ. Indeed, Allah forgives. No. Indeed, Allah does away with. Indeed, Allah wipes out, obliterates the sins. One of them. No. Most of them. No. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. Indeed, Allah wipes away the sins. All of them. All of them. إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Indeed, He is the forgiving. He is the, again, Rahim, merciful. Let's say Rahim for now, because we'll see Rahmah is far beyond mercy. What level of magnanimity is this? What level of, who is this Allah? I don't understand Him. He could destroy me in an instant. If all of us as mankind were to put our heads, all of us in this room, and mankind, and men, and jinn, and birds, and everyone, put our heads in prostration before Him, His glory is not going to increase one iota. And if we all unsheathe our swords in rebellion against Him, His grandeur is not going to lessen one iota. He is telling me, He is attributing me, sinful servant, to Himself and saying, my servant. Do not despair in the rahmah of Allah. And this rahmah, I know my time is running out. This rahmah, which we'll again go into in the next few days, how does Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam speak about this rahmah? That Amir al-Mu'mineen, that when we gather sometimes on Thursday nights, we begin the supplication that he taught us, that dua kumail, and we begin it by saying, Allahumma inni as'aluka, oh Allah, I ask you, with what? By what? Birahmatika allati, by your, again, rahmah, which, allati what? Wasi'at kulla shay, which encompasses everything. So his rahmah is infinite. Of course it has to be infinite because He is infinite. And His rahmah is of Him. But how does Amir al-Mu'mineen describe this rahmah for us? And describe Allah through His rahmah for us. He says in this hadith, وَمِنْ رَحْمَتِهِ, talking about Allah, and from His, again I don't want to say mercy, from His rahmah, أَنَّهُ خَلَقَ مِئَةَ رَحْمَةٍ. He created or took from that infinite rahmah 100 sections of rahmah. He took from that 100 sections. And He placed it where? جَعَلَ مِنْهَا رَحْمَةً وَاحِدَةً. So He, from His infinite rahmah, He took out one section of 100 parts. And from those 100 parts, He took out one. So 1% of that. And He put that وَجَعَلَ مِنْهَا رَحْمَةً وَاحِدَةً فِي الْخَلْقِ كُلِّهِمْ, amongst all of creation, He put that 1% of that 100, rahmah. فَبِهَا يَتَرَاحَمُ النَّاسِ. It is from that one small section that all of mankind shows compassion to one another. وَتَرْحَمُ الْوَالِدَةُ وَلَدَهَا. And the mother, when you see her showing love to her offspring, it is from that one little of 100 that He has placed amongst His creation. وَتَحَنَّ الْأُمَّهَاتُ مِنَ الْحَيْوَانَاتِ عَلَىٰ أَوْلَادِهَا. And all of the mothers in all of the animal kingdom. You know, in the crocodiles, I don't know if you've watched this National Geographic Wild channel and all these channels, you will see amazing things. The crocodiles, even if the father crocodile gets too hungry, he'll eat his offspring. The only way he won't eat them is if the mother hides them in her own mouth. From this one instance of mercy, of rahmah, Allah is placed amongst mankind. All of the animal kingdom show rahmah to their offspring. And then, فَإِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ الْقِيَامَةِ, when the day of judgment comes, when the day of resurrection comes, أَضَافَ هَذِهِ الرَّحْمَةَ الْوَاحِدَةَ إِلَى 99 رَحْمَةً. He will reconnect this 1% back to the other 99 and then take account of mankind. This is Allah. You know, once one of the brothers in London, he has, let's say, a checkered past. He wasn't a very good guy in the past. He said, I've committed every sin you can think of, I've done it. And he's saying to me, and I always thought Allah would never forgive me for what I've done. This is somehow how if I look at my past, and if you, thank God, Allah has placed between you and I those screens of shame whereby you cannot see my sins, I cannot see your sins. Well, if we saw each other's ugliness, we would not say salam to one another. So this person is saying to me, I have committed every sin. I thought Allah would never forgive me until, he says, until I became a parent and I had children. This aspect only the parents in this room might be able to appreciate. And when my son, and I come back from a hard day's work, and he has put chocolate smears all over the wall, and I don't know, the house is like in a state because then he continuously disobeys, and then I'm gearing myself, how should I tell him? He's in for it now, and then I call him towards me, and then when he comes, he looks up at me with these big eyes, and he pretends to be sorry, and I can't do anything but just start laughing. And I want to tell him off and I want to put a frown on my face, but I can't. But Allah, the distance of wisdom between myself and my child is minuscule or incomparable between the distance of wisdom between yourself and myself. And when I have sinned time and time again, and I come to you with my puppy eyes, how is it possible that Allah would behave with me the way I have been thinking about Him? Or this time, as you said, a parent's love for their child. But we know the Ma'asumeen have spoken about the fear of Allah. Fear. We have actually misunderstood this fear as well. It is not a fear that He'll punish and He'll put in hellfire and the flames. This is not the fear they had. In fact, they attest to this. In that same dua, Kumail, that we just spoke about. Does Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam not say, he describes the hellfire and the flames and the roaring and all of the possible punishments that could be afflicted on mankind. And at the last, what does he say to Allah? He says to Allah, not to us. He is speaking to Allah. He says to Allah, مَا هَكَذَا الظَّنُّ بِكَ. This is not the way we think about you. This is not the opinion I have of you. Imam does not have this opinion of Allah. So what is the fear then that they are talking about? If we have a love relationship with someone, we'll understand that if I upset someone, I'm not fearful that he or she, my counterpart, my beloved, is going to come and slap me and punish. No. But just that distance that will be created between myself and my beloved is really heartbreaking. And if it's a row we've had or a tiff, it's going to take a day or two to get over that. That day or two is going to be so awkward and so difficult. Imagine between oneself and Allah. That fear, imagine, in that famous dua we have from the Ma'asumin alayhi salam, or reported from them, that we recite often in the month of Sha'ban, preceding the month of Ramadan, we call it the invocation of Sha'ban, or al-munajat al-Sha'baniyya. And munajat doesn't even mean prayer, it doesn't even mean calling, it doesn't mean supplication. Munajat means whispering. It is a whispered conversation between lover and beloved. At that time where everyone sleeps and you can hear the pin drop because the world is asleep, that's when the lovers come together. And the lover talks to the beloved at this time. At this time of whispering, in that munajat, look at how the Imam is saying, Ilahi, look how he's talking to Allah. Ilahi, in akhadtani bi jurmi, akhadtuka bi afwik. Oh my Lord, if you are going to take me, and if you are going to perceive me by my crime, I perceive you by your pardon. وَإِنْ أَخَذْتَنِي بِذُنُوبِي أَخَذْتُكَ بِمَغْفِرَتِكَ. And if you are going to take me or perceive me by my many sins, I perceive you by your forgiveness. وَإِنْ, look at the love. وَإِنْ أَدْخَلْتَنِي النَّارِ. And if you fling me and toss me into that hellfire, أَعْلَمْتُ أَهْلَهَا أَنِّي أُحِبُّكَ. I will inform its inhabitants that I love you. This is the relationship Allah wants with His creation. As the one wise man said in Arabic, مَنْ خَافَ شَيْئًا هَرَّ. This is the fear. مَنْ خَافَ شَيْئًا هَرَّبَ مِنْهُ. Whoever fears something flees from it. You fear a lion, you run as fast as you can. مَنْ خَافَ شَيْئًا هَرَّبَ مِنْهُ. وَمَنْ خَافَ اللَّهَ هَرَبَ إِلَيْهِ. Whoever fears something flees from it, but whoever fears Allah flees to Him. Because my security and my salvation from everything I fear is with my beloved. This Hussein, who we gather to remember, speaks about that beloved in that way. He speaks to Allah, أنت الذي أزلت الأغيار عن قلوب أحبائك. It is you, O Allah, who has stripped away all others from the hearts of your lovers. How? حتى لم يحبوا سواك, such that they love none but you. وَلَمْ يَلْجُوا إِلَىٰ غَيْرِكَ. And do not recourse and do not seek refuge with anyone but you. Love causes us to seek refuge with Him. So, as I want to try and make a habit every night to recap the points we've come up, so they stick with us a bit longer. What often happens when we listen to these lectures, and then we go downstairs, and as soon as the car turns in the key turns in the ignition, we don't know what was spoken. We know it was good, but what it was. So let's try and, one, however we think about Allah, we will act in that way. Be it prayer, fasting, or be it standing, laughing, smoking, joking, whatever we do, we're going to act that way because we know He's watching. However we perceive Him, the value of the act will be in accordance to it. And if we are duty-minded, fiqh-minded, or fiqh is important, I'm not saying fiqh is not important, but if we are fiqh-minded or taklifi-minded, and I've been charged with this responsibility that I have to carry out, otherwise I'll be punished, that's going to detract from the value of that deed. 3, the act done out of love is far superior than the act done out of fear. You remember the tea, milk and 2 sugars that I gave to my wife was far superior and more wholesome than I gave to my boss out of fear. And so once you think about it this way, 4, the focus should not be on that deed or on that act of fasting or hajj or prayer. That's just a medium which I have to cross. My focus should be Allah, like the door of the house we said. I don't concentrate on the door. The door is just a means by which I get to my beloved goal. 5, Allah has primarily marketed Himself in an overwhelming way, in the way we have described today. Yes, punishments have been spoken about. For those who are obstinately, purposefully, continuously and intentionally sinning and knowing they are sinning. Yes, we know. We, Allah, are weak. We sin out of weakness. And we will sin again. We will, because we are weak. For those people, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا, we mentioned already. And finally, the fear that the Imams ﷺ mentioned was also a fear, not that we have a fear, but a fear also of love, or a fear of being distanced from that beloved. That's a far greater appreciation of fear. And so on these nights that Hussein we spoke about, we see those who loved Allah most and who Allah loved most faced the biggest tribulations through which Allah gave them opportunity to grow. Tribulation and trials and misfortune, we say misfortunes, in the grander scheme of things are not misfortunes, everything is rahmah. But these misfortunes we face in this life are nothing but opportunity through which to grow. The closer Allah wants to pull one to Himself, the more tribulation and challenges that person faces. And so the most beloved Habib of Allah, the Holy Prophet, for example, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, has been reported to have said, مَا أُوذِيَ نَبِيٌّ مِثْلَ مَا أُوذِيتُ. No prophet faced hardship or was annoyed or was troubled the way I have been troubled, the Prophet is saying. You face the most tribulations of all the prophets when we say, Ya Rasulullah. The tribulations you faced in your life perhaps were magnified after your passing away. Ya Rasulullah, if you could see only 61 years after your migration, if you could see, Ya Rasulullah, the one who resembled you in his features, in his voice, in his mannerisms, the son of your grandson rode towards the enemy camps in Karbala. Oh Rasulullah, if you could see that my Hussein is saying on that battlefield, oh Allah, bear witness that the one who is most resemblant to your Prophet is now marching towards him. And if we missed your Prophet, we would look at Ali al-Akbar to remember your Prophet. Oh Rasulullah, if you could see his chest was shattered in Karbala. Ya Rasulullah, if you could see your grandsons trampled under the hooves of the horses. Or if you could see your granddaughter, Ya Rasulullah, mounting that hill in Karbala, from which she could see her beloved brother on the ground with blood and sweat, and his chest was mounted upon, and he is shouting towards her, O Zainab, I am still alive, go back into the camp, do not come out. Or if you could see, Ya Rasulullah, the children of your progeny, how the earrings were snatched from the ears and their ears bled, how the slaps of the enemies came on their faces, or how the pointed spears were prodded into their backs so they had to march from one city to the next, how my Imam Sajjad was ailing and weak in Karbala, that when he heard his father was on the battlefield, he tried to stand but could not stand. But Ya Rasulullah, this was not the worst part. The worst part, when my Imam was asked what was the worst episode of this tragedy, he replied, Asham, Asham, when the daughters of Fatima were paraded through. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this little effort we have managed to put in His way, that He gives us the tawfiq and the ability to better understand Him, through the words we have mentioned of the Quran and through those of our holy Ma'sumin alayhi salam, and through his better understanding we grow closer and closer to him with a better appreciation of him. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.